I remember the smell of fresh flowers and polished shoes in the hall, but strangely, I wasn't there. It all started on the day I graduated from university. I had imagined this moment countless times. The pride in my parents' eyes, the applause, the celebratory dinner that would make the entire family beam with pride. But that day when I checked my phone, I felt my chest tighten. My parents weren't answering my calls. And when I reached the restaurant, I found out something that crushed me. I wasn't invited to my own graduation dinner. I still remember standing outside the restaurant, my gown clinging awkwardly to me, my cap slightly askew. The laughter from inside reached me like daggers. I felt invisible, not just ignored, erased. And the reason? Apparently, they had planned a family gathering and forgot to include me. Or so they claimed. I should have been angry, I know, but I froze, feeling a mix of confusion, shame, and deep, gnawing hurt. I left that night with a hollow stomach and a bruised heart, not knowing then that this exclusion would fuel me for years to come. In those days, I spent hours replaying that dinner in my mind. Why me? Was I really that unimportant? The whispers at school didn't help. Friends asking if I went, classmates smirking when I explained I hadn't. That feeling of being invisible is something that never leaves you. That night, I made a silent promise to myself. One day, I would never feel powerless again. One day, they would see me, not just see me, but respect me. After graduation, I threw myself into my career. While my friends were enjoying their early successes, I stayed focused on building something meaningful. I started working in the restaurant industry, beginning at the very bottom, washing dishes, cleaning tables, serving patrons late into the night. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. Every small victory, being trusted with a station, learning recipes, managing a shift, added fuel to the fire inside me. I kept one thought in mind every day. I would rise above the people who had belittled me. Meanwhile, my parents continued their lifestyle of showing off my siblings' achievements. Every phone call was a reminder. You should have seen how wonderful your brother's dinner was. They spoke as if I had no place at all. Every word felt like salt on a wound. I stopped calling altogether. At the restaurant, I noticed the small injustices that often go unseen, the disrespect to hardworking staff, the arrogance of owners who thought money gave them power over people. Each of these moments planted a seed in my mind. I started imagining what it would be like to own a place like this one day, not just to make money, but to show people who had underestimated me what I was capable of. I worked relentlessly for years. Every promotion was a battle won. Every manager who doubted me, every customer who underestimated my ability, every night I worked while others rested. It all added layers to my determination. I learned everything: marketing, finances, operations, staff management, customer psychology. I saved every penny I could, investing in small ventures, slowly building my capital. But my ultimate goal wasn't just financial, it was personal. I imagined that one day I would stand at the helm of a restaurant that could overshadow the one where my family had celebrated without me. The story of my exclusion became my private fuel. Each time I felt low or discouraged, I would close my eyes and remember that empty chair at my graduation dinner. It wasn't just about revenge, it was about justice and proving to myself that I could succeed on my own terms. After almost a decade of hard work, I finally had enough to start looking for a place to open my own restaurant. But I didn't just want any restaurant. I wanted one in the same area, near the very restaurant where I had been excluded. In the same neighborhood my parents had flaunted my siblings' achievements. I started discreetly scouting locations, analyzing foot traffic, researching menus, studying customer preferences. I wanted a place that felt welcoming but classy, something that would attract attention quickly. It had to be perfect. Meanwhile, my family continued their usual bragging. Social media posts of lavish dinners, photos of my sibling in sparkling suits, captions boasting about success. I never responded, never commented, but every post sharpened my focus. This wasn't about hurting anyone. It was about claiming the recognition I had been denied. I had dreamed of this moment for years, the moment when I would finally take control of my story. The search for the perfect restaurant wasn't easy. I spent months walking through streets that were familiar yet taunting, looking at every for sale sign as if it were a clue from the universe. Every place I considered had some flaw: a poor location, outdated interiors, or owners who weren't willing to sell. It was exhausting. And more than once, I questioned myself, but then I saw it. A small, slightly run-down restaurant on a corner that everyone passed by on their way home. The sign was faded, the windows streaked with old rainwater, but I could see the potential immediately. It had everything I wanted: space, charm, and, most importantly, proximity. It was in the same area where my parents' favorite restaurants thrived, the same neighborhood where my graduation dinner had left me standing outside like a ghost. I walked inside cautiously. The air smelled of old grease and stale coffee, but I didn't flinch. I imagined it differently. I saw a bustling, vibrant space filled with laughter, clinking glasses, and the smell of fresh food. I could almost hear the faint echo of my own voice welcoming guests, taking reservations, thanking loyal customers. Negotiations were tense. The owner was skeptical of my vision, dismissing me as just another young entrepreneur with dreams bigger than experience. But I persisted. I showed him my detailed business plan, my savings, my years of experience, and most importantly, my relentless drive. He finally relented, perhaps sensing that I wouldn't leave without making this mine. The day I signed the papers was surreal. I remember holding the keys in my hand, staring at them like they were a trophy. This was more than a property. It was a symbol of years, of pain, perseverance, and planning. I couldn't wait to transform it, to turn every corner into a statement of my triumph. The renovation process was grueling but exhilarating. I worked closely with designers, chefs, and staff, making sure every detail aligned with my vision. The walls were repainted with warm, inviting colors. The kitchen was completely overhauled with state-of-the-art equipment. I even hired a small team of people I trusted, people who shared my passion for excellence and fairness. Every night as I walked through the empty halls of the restaurant, I imagined the grand opening. I pictured my parents walking past, surprised by the changes, perhaps even speechless at the elegance, the attention to detail, the energy of the place. But I didn't dwell on revenge. I focused on building something that reflected who I had become, a person who refused to be invisible, who had worked tirelessly to claim their space in the world. Challenges arose constantly. Suppliers delivered late, contractors made mistakes, and there were days when I felt utterly overwhelmed. But each obstacle reminded me why I started. The sting of that graduation night was still there, quietly fueling me to persist. I couldn't allow failure to visit this dream. Not now, not after everything I had endured. And then came the menu. This was my personal touch, the heart of the restaurant. Every dish had a story, inspired by my own journey. Comfort foods to make people feel at home, elegant dishes to evoke a sense of celebration, and desserts that carried a touch of whimsy. I named a few after subtle reminders of resilience: the comeback cake, the underdog special, and my personal favorite, the graduation plate. Marketing was another battlefield. I wanted the launch to be unforgettable but tasteful. I sent out invitations to local influencers, created social media teasers, and designed a soft launch evening to build buzz. Every post, every photo, every detail was calculated to make people notice, to make them curious, to make them want to experience what I had created. Finally, the opening night arrived. I stood behind the counter, nerves buzzing like electricity through my veins. Guests began to trickle in, then the trickle became a stream. The laughter, the clinking of glasses, the excited chatter, it was intoxicating. I watched as people tasted the food, complimented the staff, and took photos of the restaurant. It was everything I had imagined and more. And then, almost as if scripted by fate, I saw them. My parents, standing awkwardly near the entrance, their eyes wide in disbelief. My sibling beside them, looking equally confused. They hadn't known about the launch, hadn't expected to see me in this space running this beautiful, thriving restaurant. My heart skipped a beat, a mixture of triumph and lingering hurt rushing through me. I didn't rush to greet them. I let the moment settle. I wanted them to feel the weight of my success, to recognize that the person they had ignored that night at my graduation dinner was now standing at the helm of a place they could only admire from a distance. Throughout the night, I moved with purpose, greeting guests, overseeing the kitchen, ensuring every detail was perfect. My parents hovered near the edge, their presence almost ghostly. I noticed their quiet glances, the way they whispered to each other, trying to make sense of what had happened. It wasn't revenge in the traditional sense. It was the quiet, unspoken power of success. They had underestimated me, and now they had no choice but to witness what I had built. By the end of the evening, the restaurant had gained its first wave of loyal customers. Social media posts were already spreading the word. And my parents? They left without a word, leaving me with a strange sense of closure. For the first time in years, the pain of that graduation dinner had begun to fade. I stood in the empty restaurant the next morning, sunlight streaming through the windows, and smiled. I had turned exclusion into motivation, hurt into determination, and a forgotten dream into reality. The journey wasn't over. Success always demanded work, but I had crossed a threshold. I was no longer invisible. And for the first time in years, I felt truly seen. Success tastes sweeter when it's seasoned with the memory of those who doubted you. The months after the grand opening were a whirlwind. Word spread fast. People were talking, not just in our neighborhood, but all over the city. Reviews raved about the atmosphere, the attention to detail, the warmth of the staff. The restaurant was no longer a dream. It was a thriving reality, buzzing with life, laughter, and the unmistakable scent of success. Every day, I would walk through the doors, inhaling deeply, feeling a surge of pride. This was my space, my creation, my triumph. I watched the staff interact with guests, proud to have built a team that shared my vision and respected one another. It was everything I had wanted, a place where everyone felt included, appreciated, and seen. And yet, the past had a way of creeping in. It started subtly at first. A familiar car parked across the street, the soft echo of a voice I recognized from years ago. Then one afternoon, I caught sight of my parents in the dining area, quietly observing, as if they had stumbled into a world they couldn't quite understand. My sibling lingered beside them, glancing around, eyes wide with disbelief. I didn't approach immediately. I wanted to savor the moment, to let the tension build naturally. I continued serving guests, checking the kitchen, managing reservations, all while keeping one eye on them. I noticed their discomfort, the way they avoided making eye contact, the hesitant glances, the whispered conversations. They were clearly struggling to reconcile the person they had dismissed with the confident owner standing before them now. Days turned into weeks and their presence became more frequent. Social media posts followed, subtle mentions, photos that didn't quite reach the story, captions full of vague admiration and forced pride. Each time I felt a mix of satisfaction and caution. I didn't want confrontation, I wanted recognition, but only on my terms. Meanwhile, the restaurant continued to grow. I introduced themed nights, special events, and seasonal menus. The staff thrived under my leadership, and the community began to see the restaurant as more than just a business. It became a hub of connection, celebration, and warmth. Customers returned not just for the food, but for the feeling they experienced the moment they walked in. And then it happened. One evening, as I was overseeing a busy Friday night, a table of guests approached me. My parents. They asked for a private moment to speak. My heart raced. Part of me wanted to confront them right then and there. Another part, The part that had spent years honing patience and strategy told me to wait. We stepped into a quiet corner. My mother's eyes were soft, hesitant, almost ashamed. My father avoided my gaze, but there was a subtle tension in his jaw that spoke louder than words. We didn't expect this, my mother finally said, voice barely above a whisper. We never imagined you know, I let her trail off. I didn't fill in the gaps. She had left me out of my graduation celebration, made me feel invisible, yet here she was, acknowledging what I had built. I guess you weren't ready to include me back then, I said slowly, letting each word land. But now, you can see that I didn't need permission. I didn't need validation. I built this on my own. My father finally spoke, voice low, almost reluctant. We were proud, but we made mistakes. We never realized how much we hurt you. I looked at them carefully. I could see the genuine discomfort, the realization that their neglect had consequences, but I also saw a glimmer of respect. This wasn't about revenge. It was about recognition and closure. I appreciate that, I said, but this restaurant says it's not just a business, it's a statement. It's about being seen, about working hard, about never letting anyone else define your worth. I hope you understand that. They nodded, silent, absorbing the weight of my words. Even after that conversation, tension lingered, subtle, but undeniable. My parents couldn't hide their curiosity, their occasional discomfort when seeing the restaurant filled with life, laughter, and success. My sibling, who had once basked in family praise, now had to acknowledge that their accomplishments weren't the only ones that mattered. And through it all, I kept moving forward. The restaurant expanded, received awards, and became a staple in the community. I introduced mentorship programs for young entrepreneurs, hired people who had faced similar struggles, and created an environment where everyone could feel recognized. Each success, each accolade, was a quiet reminder of how far I had come. But the true satisfaction wasn't in the recognition or the awards. It was in the way I had transformed my pain into purpose, how I had turned exclusion into motivation, and how I had built something meaningful, not just for myself, but for everyone who walked through those doors. By the end of the year, the restaurant had become a beacon of success. My parents still visited, often quietly, observing from the sidelines. I didn't need them to approve anymore. The validation had come from within, and yet every glance they gave, every hesitant compliment, reminded me of that graduation night and how far I had risen since then. I had achieved more than I ever imagined. And the best part, I had done it on my own terms without bending to anyone else's expectations. Some moments in life are inevitable. You can feel them approaching, even if you don't want them to. This was one of those moments. It was a quiet Tuesday evening, and the restaurant was in that sweet spot, busy enough to hum with energy, but calm enough for me to notice the small details. I was reviewing inventory when I felt a presence behind me. I turned, and there they were. My parents, my sibling, all of them, standing in the doorway, eyes wide, expressions a mixture of disbelief and something else, something heavier. Expectation, regret, maybe a hint of fear. I didn't greet them immediately. I let them take in the scene, the bustling restaurant, the laughter of guests, the smooth operation of a place that now belonged to me. I could see it in their faces. They were seeing a version of me they had never imagined. Finally, my father spoke. His voice was controlled but strained. This place. How did you do all this? I smiled faintly, keeping my tone even. Years of work, focus, and determination. I didn't need anyone's approval to build this. My mother stepped forward, her eyes glistening. We didn't know. We never imagined you'd come this far. I could feel the tension thickening. It wasn't just surprise, they were wrestling with guilt, pride, and a quiet realization that they had underestimated me. I remember the graduation dinner, I said, my voice calm but firm. The one I wasn't invited to, the one you thought didn't matter. Do you remember that? They flinched. My sibling looked away. My father swallowed hard. Yes, my mother whispered. We made a mistake. We didn't realize. I raised a hand, stopping them. Don't. Don't try to soften it. You left me out. You made me feel invisible. That hurt a lot. But I didn't let it stop me. I didn't wait for an apology. I didn't wait for validation. I built this. I gestured around the restaurant, the polished tables, the happy staff, the bustling kitchen. This is my work, my vision, my determination turned into reality, and now you see it for yourselves. The room was quiet. Their eyes roamed, drinking in the space, the people, the energy. I could see the recognition dawning, the respect they hadn't offered me years ago. You've done something incredible, my father finally admitted. We're proud, even if we were blind before. I nodded, a faint smile tugging at my lips. Thank you, but this isn't about pride. It's about understanding that your absence didn't define me. Your approval wasn't necessary. I defined my own worth. My sibling, who had always been the center of family attention, stepped forward, voice hesitant. I never thought you'd come this far. I always underestimated you. I looked at them, seeing the sincerity in their eyes, but also the lingering awkwardness. That's okay. Underestimating me is part of what fueled this, but I hope you've learned something. Never assume someone's worth based on what you see or what you choose to see. For a moment, we all just stood there, the weight of years hanging between us. No anger, no shouting, just acknowledgement, recognition, the kind that doesn't need words. Then I said something that surprised even me. You're welcome to enjoy the restaurant. You can dine, celebrate, or just watch. But remember this. I'm here on my terms. This is my world now, and I will continue to build it, whether you're in it or not. They nodded slowly, silently acknowledging the truth in my words. My mother's eyes shimmered with tears. My father's jaw tightened in reflection. My sibling looked humbled, finally recognizing the strength I had carried all along. The confrontation didn't end with a dramatic fight or an angry argument. It didn't need to. The impact was in the presence, the recognition, the shift in understanding. They had underestimated me once, but now they had no choice but to respect me. After they left that evening, I stood in the quiet restaurant, taking in the soft hum of satisfied guests and the clinking of glasses. I realized something profound. The real victory wasn't in their acknowledgement. It was in knowing that I had achieved what I had set out to do without needing anyone else to lift me up. For the first time, the memory of that empty graduation chair didn't sting. It had become a symbol of something greater, resilience, self-reliance, and the power of taking your pain and turning it into purpose. And in that moment, I felt an overwhelming sense of peace. The confrontation had given closure, but the journey wasn't over. Success demanded vigilance, creativity, and heart. But now I knew I could face anything. Because I had already faced the hardest thing, being ignored, being underestimated, and still rising above it. Some wounds never truly vanish, but some of them can become the driving force that creates something remarkable. Looking back, I realized that some of the hardest moments in life are also the ones that teach us the most. After years of struggle, planning, and relentless determination, I finally understood the true meaning of success. It wasn't just about owning a restaurant or proving my parents wrong. It wasn't about money, status, or accolades. It was about claiming my own story and living it fully on my own terms. That graduation dinner, which had felt like the cruelest rejection of my life, became a turning point. It was the spark that ignited my determination, the memory that pushed me through nights of exhaustion and uncertainty. The hurt I felt became fuel for my ambition, shaping me into someone who would never allow others to define their worth or limit their dreams. Standing in the restaurant today, watching guests laugh, celebrate, and enjoy the space I built, I felt a profound sense of peace. I had transformed rejection into opportunity, exclusion into empowerment, and pain into purpose. I also realized that the journey wasn't only about me. The team I built, the young staff I mentored, and the community we served, they all thrived because I refused to let negativity or doubt define my path. Success isn't just personal, it becomes a force that touches others, inspires them, and gives them courage to follow their own dreams. Seeing my parents eventually acknowledge my achievements was validating, yes. But it wasn't the reward I had worked for. The real reward was the knowledge that I had turned a painful memory into something meaningful, something that would last far beyond my own satisfaction. Life has a way of testing us in ways that feel unfair. It asks us to prove ourselves when others doubt us, to keep moving forward when doors are closed, and to remain patient when recognition doesn't come immediately. But the lesson is simple. You are defined not by what others think of you, but by what you choose to do with your life. To anyone who has ever felt invisible, undervalued, or excluded, I say this: use that feeling. Let it drive you, not destroy you. Build, create, work, and persist. Success tastes even sweeter when it comes from your own hands, earned through resilience and perseverance. And remember, life has a strange way of rewarding those who refuse to give up. The person who once stood outside, watching others celebrate without them, can one day stand at the center of their own world, proud, confident, and fully seen. The empty chair may have once symbolized rejection, but today it reminds me of something far more powerful: the strength to rise, the courage to create, and the wisdom to define my own worth.